I had been living alone in the western forest for 6 months. Life there was quiet, peaceful, until winter arrived. Snow covered everything. The air was freezing, and thick fog surrounded my cabin day and night. One morning, after chopping wood, I went inside to make breakfast. As I cracked an egg into the pan, I suddenly heard a voice outside. "Help. Please. Help." It sounded close, like someone was standing right next to my cabin, but because of the fog, I couldn't see anyone. I told myself it was just my imagination and went back inside. But then, the same voice echoed again. "Help. Somebody. Please." This time, I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. I looked left, then right. But there was nobody there. No footprints in the snow. No movement. Nothing. When I walked back into the cabin, my heart nearly stopped. The egg I left in the frying pan was now perfectly cooked and placed neatly on a plate. Someone had been inside my house. That's when I opened my old trunk, loaded my Russian pistol, and went back out into the fog, determined to find whoever was messing with me. After searching for a while, I finally saw him, a man lying on the ground, badly injured. I rushed toward him and said, "Don't worry. I'll take you to my cabin." But he shook his head slowly and whispered in a deep, shaking voice, "No, run while you still can. He's going to kill you." I asked him, Who are you talking about?" But before he could answer, he died. I tried calling the police, no signal. So I lifted his body, planning to take him back to my cabin, when I suddenly heard footsteps, slow, heavy footsteps, moving toward me through the fog. At that moment, I realized something. Whoever killed that man was still here, and now he was coming for me. I dropped the body, ran to my truck, and drove straight toward the city, leaving the forest behind forever. But one question still haunts me. If that man was dying outside in the snow, then who was inside my cabin, cooking my breakfast? My name is George, and for years, I tried to convince myself that what happened in that forest wasn't real. But every winter, when the snow starts to fall, I remember that night all over again. Back in May of 2007, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I robbed a small convenience store on the edge of town. I was angry, desperate, stupid. And things went wrong. The clerk tried to stop me. And in the struggle, the gun went off. He dropped right there behind the counter. I didn't wait. I ran. When the police started searching for me, I disappeared. I drove west, deep into the woods, and eventually found an old abandoned wooden cabin far from civilization. No roads. No neighbors. No hikers. Just trees, silence, and cold air. I stayed there. I didn't leave. I didn't talk to anyone. I lived like a ghost, up until December. Everything felt strangely peaceful. I cut wood, cooked simple meals, and tried to forget who I used to be. But once winter fully settled in, the world around the cabin changed. Thick fog rolled in. Snow piled up against the windows. The entire forest went quiet, like it was holding its breath. On New Year's Eve, 2008, I celebrated alone. No fireworks. No sound. Just the fireplace burning, and the wind outside. That night, the snow was falling harder than usual. Visibility was almost zero. I was sitting at the small table, drinking a cup of coffee, when suddenly, someone knocked on my front door. It wasn't a normal knock. It was slow, heavy, and deliberate. Like whoever, or whatever, was out there knew exactly where I was. My heart started racing. For a moment, I thought, maybe the police finally found me. I didn't panic. I quietly slipped out through the back door and circled around the cabin, hoping to see if any officers were nearby, but there were no lights, no voices, and no tire tracks in the snow. If it were police, they would have surrounded the place. They wouldn't knock. And wait, I slowly approached the front of the cabin. The snow was untouched. The ground was smooth. Not even a single footprint led to the door, and then, the knock came again, this time louder. I froze. My breath turned to mist in the freezing air. My hands were shaking as I whispered, "Who's there?" For a few seconds, there was silence. Then a voice replied, soft, dry, and unsettlingly calm, "You know who I am." The second I heard it, I felt something inside me collapse. That voice, it wasn't human. I backed away from the door and reached for my phone, thinking maybe I really was losing my mind. But when I looked at the screen, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My phone had full signal, but there was already an unknown call open on the screen. I hadn't touched anything, but the speakers suddenly turned on, and that same voice whispered through the phone, "Don't open the door." My hands went numb. I tried backing out of the call, but the phone froze completely. The audio crackled, and the voice spoke again. This time sounding closer, "I told you not to open it." I turned toward the window, and that's when I saw it, a figure standing outside in the fog, tall, motionless, hovering just inches above the ground. Its body was dark and blurred by the mist, but its face was slowly becoming clearer as it moved closer to the glass. I stepped back, barely able to breathe. Its feet weren't touching the snow. It wasn't standing. It was hanging there, drifting, and it was smiling, not a warm smile, not a human smile, just a stretched, unnatural grin frozen across its face. I ran toward the back door, but before I could touch the handle, it slammed shut on its own. The temperature inside the cabin dropped instantly. I could see my breath in front of me. My phone vibrated in my hand. A new message appeared on the screen. "You took a life in 2007. Now the forest has come to take yours." My throat tightened. My mind flashed back to the convenience store clerk, the man lying on the floor, the last look in his eyes. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I already knew. I turned slowly and looked back toward the window. The face was now pressed right against the glass, and yes, it was him, the store clerk. His eyes were wide open, unblinking, staring straight into the cabin. His skin was pale, his head tilted just slightly, like his neck was broken, and that impossible smile never moved. His lips didn't open, but his voice filled the room anyway. "Run, if you think you still can." My legs went weak. I tried to step back, but my body wouldn't respond. It felt like the air itself was holding me in place. Then the sound came again, a knock, but this time, it didn't come from the door. It came from right behind me, inside the cabin. I turned around slowly, and the last thing I remember was that same frozen smile, standing inches from my face, before everything turned silent and white, like falling snow. The forest never gave my body back, and if you ever find yourself deep in the woods on a freezing winter night, and you hear a knock on your door, don't answer it. Some doors should never be opened. Some sins never stay buried. My name is Emily. And for the past 2 months, I've been living alone in a small rented cabin near the Rocky Mountains. Winter was at its peak, the snow was so deep that the roads had disappeared, and the only things left were silence. Cold. An endless white fog. I thought living out here would be peaceful, but that night changed everything. The snowstorm was heavy, and the fog was thick enough to swallow the entire forest. The wind kept slamming against the cabin windows. I was sitting near the fireplace, drinking tea. When I heard it, footsteps, soft, slow, pressing into the snow outside. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then the footsteps stopped right beside my cabin wall. I slowly walked toward the window and looked outside. But all I could see was fog. Then I noticed something on the glass. Breath, foggy breath marks. From the outside of the window, as if someone was standing inches away, staring in, but there was no face. No body. Nothing there. My heart started pounding. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, not loud, not desperate, just slow, steady, and rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. I swallowed and whispered, "Who's there?" For a moment, silence, then a woman's voice answered, cold, distant, and hollow, "Please, let me in. It's so cold." The voice didn't sound like it was coming from behind the door, it sounded like it was echoing from everywhere at once. I tried to stay calm and asked, "Who are you?" This time, the voice sounded closer. Broken. Almost trembling. "You can see me, I'm right here. With you." My hand froze on the door handle. For a second, I thought maybe it was a lost traveler, but then I noticed something. There were no footprints outside. The snow was untouched, completely smooth, yet the breath marks were still on the glass. Whoever, or whatever, was there, wasn't standing on the ground. I didn't open the door. The knocking stopped. A few seconds later, I heard scratching on the back wall of the cabin, like something was clawing against the wood. Then footsteps, on the roof, slow, circling, until they stopped directly above my bedroom. And then that same cold voice whispered, "I've been waiting for you. People who live inside don't belong out here in the snow." My breath caught in my throat. The fireplace suddenly went out. The entire cabin dropped into darkness, and in that darkness, I felt breath right beside my neck, even though there was no one behind me. Then the voice whispered again, "Open the door. I'm not outside." My hands were shaking. I looked down at the floor, and in the faint glow of the dying fire, I saw my shadow. But next to my shadow, there was another one, standing, moving, breathing, but I wasn't moving at all. And in that same cold whisper, it said, "Winter will be long this year. Loneliness is never empty." The footsteps slowly faded off the roof. The scratching stopped. The cabin went silent. But after that night, I realized something. Inside that cabin, I was never alone again.